Assalamu alaikum. Hi, I'm Miriam Louise Curtis and welcome to my show Living a Dynamic Life. For any information relating to the show, for any questions you may have, the email address is info@umorchannel.tv. On the show I'm here to inspire you and hopefully to help you change your life, and sometimes that starts with tiny steps. Maybe a change in diet, a change in personal awareness, a change in realising our lives and maybe what's serving us and what's not, and maybe more of an awareness to heart-centred living. I've lived as a Sufi for many years without realising, but people like my guest tonight, welcome to Dave Binder, live a heart-centred life in a very beautiful way. So welcome, David.
Hello there.
Hi. So tell me about your dynamic life.
Wow, that's a big question. Okay, my dynamic life started when I was a child, as everyone's does, and what I found that when I was at school especially, I was actually a very shy child. I didn't fit in with other children. I was left out of the cliques, the clique crowds, and I found that my self-esteem was really low. This was probably because I had quite a challenging childhood, and that childhood, the wounds from the childhood spilled through into my school life initially, and then onto adult life. But I just remember being very alienated, and but when I was young, I always felt different. I felt there was something that I didn't fit in with, but in a positive way. I felt like I had a different outlook, and you know, I remember being with friends and they were quite critical of other people, and I never wanted to join in judging other people and being critical of other people, and they used to judge me for not judging other people.
For not judging, yeah. Sad, isn't it?
Absolutely, and it really, I felt, but in my heart I knew that I was doing something right. There was something right about what I was doing. I wasn't conforming. So I knew back then there was something different. I felt something different.
So you'd obviously realised as well that listening to the heart was very important to you at that early age.
Yeah. But I had no awareness that I was doing that. My awareness didn't kick in till way down the line. But yeah, I did feel as though I had some sort of awareness, but I couldn't put my finger on it, and I couldn't articulate the awareness. So it was, but I knew I was in the right place.
I always find it funny, and one of the quotes that I use quite a lot, and I really can kind of feel it from you, and obviously I've known you for quite a while. One of the big things for me is that there's a quote that religious people are frightened of going to hell, when spiritual people have already been. And obviously I do know your personal story to an extent, but it sounds like you went through your own hell in younger years.
Yes I did. Yeah, I had quite a challenging, my mum and dad were actually quite different people. Mum very gentle, my dad was quite disciplined, and now when I look back on my childhood I see what a tremendous gift it all was, and actually I had a really good balance, although at the time I was quite challenged by a lot of things that went on. It's great because it's brought me to where I am now. It's made me the person I am now. So it was a tremendous gift for me. But at the time, I felt very mind blank.
Kind of isolated, or?
Yeah, isolated, and a feeling that I wasn't. Well, you kind of get an intuitive feeling when you don't feel completely cared for.
Yeah, and I think unconditional love is something that is very difficult for most people to perhaps even comprehend, never mind actually show to one another. And certainly for me, listening to your story and having known you for a while, and knowing how kind of gregarious and social you are, although I do know that you're aware of having the right people around you at the right time. Do you think, though, that we all grow from the dark nights of the soul?
Absolutely, yeah. Without the darkness I've been through, then I wouldn't have appreciated the light. I remember hearing, I was watching a speaker on, I think it was a YouTube channel, And he said that if you were born into a room that was completely white and there was no other colour in, you wouldn't know it was white. But the moment
true.
you saw a black dot, you had the contrast of white because you had something to contrast it against. And that has always stayed with me, that quote, because, yeah, without the contrast, you don't appreciate both sides. And I've now learnt to really appreciate the dark and the light together.
And appreciate the learnings from the dark, from the sound of it as well. So what's your advice to anybody who's going through the dark night of the soul? Because we all do, don't we? It's
absolutely.
just that we do, some people are more able to share than others.
Yeah, absolutely. The only advice I'd say is just accept it, just go through it. It's there to serve you, it's there to guide you onto better things. And one of the biggest problems is we try and fight our fears and our wounds. And it's the fighting of it that causes all the issues. We need to immerse ourselves in it and just appreciate that it's there to show us that we're not in alignment with our true nature. So advice is just relax with it. We all go through it. We're human. We're having a human experience. So go through your darkness. It's okay.
Yeah, so what kind of dark periods, if you don't mind me asking, what kind of dark periods have you really been through? What have been your biggest learnings?
Dark periods, I would say, are, my childhood mostly was quite dark, and it was only after, I remember in 2003, I went to, you've probably heard of Anthony Robbins.
Yeah, Tony Robbins, he's amazing, yeah.
Yeah, great, amazing guy. And I went to his seminar, his weekend seminar, and we did a process, which was a 4-hour emotional clearance process. And we actually used it, I think the process was to replay using a videotape system of all the negative moments in our childhood, until the point where all the emotions surfaced. And then what we did then was we took all the videotapes, threw them in a skip, and we had to burn them in our minds.
Wow, that's powerful
Very
stuff.
Powerful.
Wow.
And then we had to replay the same moments, the same key moments, but this time actually give them a different meaning. So we had, in our mind's eye, we had to imagine that the same situations were loving situations. And then we had to keep replaying that and replaying that. So we were doing a programming of the brain, basically. A
reprogramming, a reconditioning. And that's kind of, because we both work with obviously people who, as we all do, we all have dark nights of the soul and emotional programs, conditioning patterns of behaviour, social pressure, peer pressure, political pressure, religious pressure sometimes. And I just think that all of that, can make it, the mixture in the pot quite kind of lumpy and bumpy at times. And I think doing something like that, and certainly as a hypnotherapist myself, when you're uncovering that and you kind of look back on it, and certainly for me, one of the other things as well is looking at those moments and maybe brainstorming and thinking, what did I actually learn from that? Rather than sometimes we play the victim, why did that happen to me? Poor old me, And it's like, it's much more constructive. What did I actually learn from that? And sometimes just doing a spider web with the spider in the middle or the situation in the middle, and then, working from that and spider webbing from that, we get more of a bigger picture and we understand what the soul is here to learn. And sometimes I think that's also cracking open the heart centre. How would that kind of fit with you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we learn from every situation we're ever in. I think that the whole of life is one big classroom. And,
absolutely.
And we're here to remember who we are via the process of learning and doing and experiencing. Because what we are is just pure divinity and love. And we sometimes have to go round the back door and learn the hard way. And often the people who learn the hardest way and go through the greatest darkness are then faced with the contrast of the brightest light.
I totally agree. I think that we're all a diamond. I think we just need, some polishing off. And I think certainly when you begin, you kind of rode on heart-centered living, or kind of call it self-personalization, self-actualization, which is actually what the Sufis teach. I think most people are not self-aware, and maybe they overreact to an emotion. And obviously Osho, who's one of the great Sufi writers, says that it is our personal responsibility. And when you break that down, it's our personal responsibility how we respond in different situations. So how do you respond differently now to perhaps how you did in the beginning of your spiritual journey?
Dramatically different. I think you've touched on a great word there, responsibility. And I now completely understand that every emotion we have and every choice we make is down to us and no one else. A lot of conflict in the world is mainly down to pointing the finger and blaming instead of actually taking responsibility for our own actions.
But that's easier, isn't it? You know,
absolutely, it's easier.
As one kind of spiritually aware person to another, it's like, oh, he did that, she did that. It wasn't my fault. And it's so easy to do that because it's an escape, isn't it?
It is.
But actually taking personal responsibility, if I'm honest, it really can suck sometimes because, oh my God, did I actually have anything to do with that relationship breakdown? You know, was my cruel tongue something to do with why that person didn't flower? And you know, certainly for me, because obviously I've had 4 children and they've been my greatest teachers, you know, that's been a very valuable lesson for me, taking personal responsibility with them and apologising to them for things I've got wrong. And obviously we only have the tools in the kit that we have at that time, don't we?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going through a process at the moment, which I'll come on to later, which has shown me that every single emotion we have, yes, you're right, it's so easy to blame another and point the finger at another. It saves us from having to look at our own stuff. And that's so hard to do because people fear it so much, having to look at your own stuff. Yes, it's easy to point the finger and say, you're the reason and cause for my fear and my problems.
Absolutely,
and when you start taking responsibility, the world looks different. Suddenly, nothing's anyone's fault. It's all about you. And that is a huge, big awakening. It's an awakening I had a while ago, and now it's been made more clear for me. I remember going back quite a few years. It's not just emotional stuff that has helped me awaken. It's actually clearing my body as well. About 20 years ago, I was sat in the park with my sister and my cousin. My cousin's Julie Silver, she's
amazing.
Yeah,
she's coming on the show for those that are interested in nutrition. She is an amazing lady.
She's fantastic, nutritional therapist, Julie. And I was sat in the park one day and I told her that I get a lot of colds and I get quite a few headaches. And she asked me 3 simple questions: how much wheat do you eat, how much dairy do you eat, and how much sugar do you eat? And I thought, okay, interesting questions. And then she went on to explain why I'm so clogged. You know, why my system's so clogged. And I thought, and at the time, I hadn't really started to clear my emotional stuff, but I thought, okay, I'm going to make a start on this because I want to take responsibility for my health and now have someone who's a relative who can open the door for me. So I actually decided I went cold turkey. I went back home after the advice Julie gave me, went back home, threw everything out my cupboards, the vast majority of my stuff out the cupboards, everything went in the bin. And then Julie took me to a vegan health supermarket, and I just bought a whole load of new stuff, and I completely changed my diet overnight.
That must have been really tough because most people don't realise, most people are kind of drinking things like Coca-Cola, Red Bull, which overstimulates the kidneys and does a lot of other, you know, kind of damage. Most people are dehydrated. And, you know, I admire you for that because certainly, you know, in my practice when I'm talking to my patients about the diet and certainly as a homeopath, and just to make it clear here as well, obviously when you're talking about health and well-being, which is the mental, the spiritual, the physical and the emotional. And obviously when we talk about that, a lot of people don't realise the body wisdom here either. They don't realise the body-mind link. And certainly one of my friends said, you know, last week that the diet we have and our bowel is really where our immune system comes from. So, you know, every credit to you, Dave. That must have been a tough time.
Yeah, but actually I had tremendous willpower because I thought, you know what, I want to feel better. I just want to feel better and I'll try it. I've got nothing to lose. And actually I remember feeling a dramatic difference in only 4 days. I felt incredible after 4 days and I thought, I don't want to go back to how I used to feel. So what I did was I went through a stage where I was quite strict in what I ate. And I realised the strictness wasn't helping either, because I felt too rigid, and that wasn't helping. So I decided to be a bit more flexible. So over the years, I've built on my knowledge of you know, what helps me nutritionally, what's good for me, because what's good for one may not be so good for another because of their system and their background and emotional input. So we all need different things to keep us at optimum health. But generally, there is a general rule, and I understood and learned what that general rule was, and I kind of stuck to it. But what I didn't do was feel guilty if I had a piece of cake,
No,
which I still don't.
Yeah, and having an awareness of your love of chocolate cheesecake.
Oh, my favourite dessert, yeah, absolutely.
But what would you say out there to the viewers? It's everything in moderation, or it's sensibly? What's your advice?
I think the advice is feel what's right for you. Do something and see how you feel, because how you feel is the key, is the answer. You know, go by your feeling. Do you feel good after it? Are you feeling good in general? Are you doing something that's making you feel tired, irritated? You know, just watch, observe, and then make a choice based on that observation. You know, and we all have free will choice, so use it wisely.
I think I love that word feeling, because a lot of the people that I see for whatever therapy or treatment they've come for, a lot of people lose the ability to feel. We get so constricted with society and everything else, and these various layers of suppression, repression, and different things. And I think sometimes obsession comes into it as well. I must do that because I like my routine. I must, you know, some people, they eat a certain meal on a Monday, they have a routine on a Tuesday. The routine kind of brings in a safety to them. And when we break out of that and we really begin to feel our way through lives, not just feeling this food's right for me, but why am I with this person, maybe in a relationship or a friendship, or why is that person kind of upsetting me in maybe the workplace? What's your advice on that, Dave? Because I know we've discussed it at length, and I think some people, just the start of that one change, to begin to feel from the heart centre what feels right for us, can be huge.
Yeah, intuition plays a major role in our life, and a lot of people haven't tapped into that intuition. So we tend to live in our heads a lot, and feeling is about the heart, thinking is about the head. We think too much, and that's why we get into conflict and problems, because we have a domino effect of thoughts that create tension. When we start feeling, we come out of our head. I know when I'm sat at home typing out information, I'm in such a relaxed place. I'm actually not thinking of what's coming out. It kind of gets channeled through. And
You're allowing it to flow.
I'm allowing it to flow, and I'm more creative because of it. Even more so than when I'm speaking. You know, typing for me is where my creativity is. And I can be far more articulate because I'm not actually thinking of anything. I'm just so relaxed, and it's coming. It feels like it's coming from an external source through me and through my fingers. Yes, it's coming from me, but it doesn't feel as though it's coming from me.
But a lot of people, certainly a lot of people I see, and they'll say, I feel blocked, I feel stagnant. Now, obviously, we're aware of the aura and how the chakras, which are the energy vortexes on the body, can get stuck. So just like we would have stagnant water, you know, you wouldn't want to drink it, you wouldn't want your dog playing in it, you certainly wouldn't want your children paddling in it. But our energy system, our energy body can get stuck as well. So, you know, when people are feeling stagnant, very often it's good to exercise. How would you, what would you advise to someone who's maybe feeling a bit stagnant, a bit stuck, a bit lost?
There's a few different things with feeling lost, because it could be something deeply emotional from the past. It could be that they need to be loved, they need to be cared and looked after and loved. But physicality comes into it and health comes into it. There's a whole host of possibilities of why someone's stagnant. So you would have to take it on a case-by-case basis. There's no one rule for all on things like that.
Yeah, very wise words. So what do you do if you feel stagnant? What kind of tools in the kit do you have that help you?
I reach out. I reach out to people who can accept me completely for who I am and who can love me. and who can guide me. And because I've got quite a large network of people, and I have the resources are there for me to do that. I know who to turn to for what, and that's a great tool to have in your toolkit.
Do you think that's a learning in itself? Because I know for me, a lot of people have said to me, you know, you're a strong woman, you brought the kids up on your own, da 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 da. But sometimes we don't always want to be strong. And what I found personally, you know, I'd love your opinion on this, is that sometimes it's actually okay to be vulnerable.
Yeah, very much so, yeah. I love being vulnerable now. I never did, and through the real love, which I've been very much a part of recently, it's helped me realise that being vulnerable is actually one of the key roles in looking after your own happiness. Because if you're vulnerable and you can express that vulnerability, then you can actually be seen properly and accepted.
Yeah, that's very, very true, because there's a Sufi saying that when a man is broken, or a woman is broken, you know, he's most strongest. And I think we have a choice, don't we, when we go through the dark night of the soul or a vulnerable time, to kind of say, actually, I'm really vulnerable, and actually I do need help. And there's a lot of holistic therapists out there, be it through acupuncture, reflexology, and because it's kind of not mainstream, many people don't understand it. And I guess really a lot of sometimes the language we use when we talk about the auras and the chakras can be quite kind of, well, what are they talking about? And yet, if you go on Google now, I always remember a friend of mine said, you know, the internet is rather like a library where everybody's got the books and just gone, you know, like that. But that information's out there, isn't it?
There's so much information, it's incredible. I went through a huge phase quite a few years ago when I had just ingested information like it was going out of fashion. I was never a reader. I used to get so bored of reading, and yet a few books came my way through many synchronicities, and it was always the right book. And what happened was, when I started reading these books, I found that the information just mirrored what I was feeling inside that I couldn't articulate, and the books helped me articulate that feeling. So it was always done that way around. The books came to me and I thought, yes, that's what I've been feeling and thinking.
Do you think that's part of, I mean, obviously we talk about law of attraction, which again is part of the Sufi teaching. So wherever we are at, people are around us on an equal level. And when we kind of open the heart centre, my feeling is, certainly from experience, and obviously we have a huge network of friends anyway ourselves, but we kind of, as we open the heart centre, we allow people to come to help us, and we then, obviously we all help each other. But do you think that then we then open the door to other tools, maybe other therapies, other books, other learnings, and, you know, people mirroring what we're going through? That can be very, very powerful.
Yeah. I do feel that the law of attraction always works if you're in a non-fearful state, because when you're in fear, you're blocking the accessibility of the right things coming to you at the right time. I've had that. I felt that recently, and when I feel in full flow, I'm finding that I'm going through a lot more synchronicities. Things are happening just at the right time. I'll think of someone and they'll phone a minute later, you know, that I've not thought of for a while, and it keeps happening more and more. Because
we've done that a few times,
yeah,
with the texting and with ringing, and you're ringing me and I'm ringing you. Yeah. It's lovely, isn't it?
It's amazing, and it makes you realise we are part of something a lot bigger here. Mm-hmm. And it's funny because I never used to feel that. I was always in my head. So for me, things like God, for example, it had to be proven. I needed to smell it, touch it, taste it, see it, hear it. And if I couldn't do any of those 5 things, if it wasn't coming in through my 5 senses, it didn't exist. It simply didn't exist. I refused to believe it. The one thing that changed that was, it was a very interesting story. I used to have a friend I used to work with who was a...
Dave, I think I may well stop you there if that's okay, because I think it would be really nice if we went to the break, and then after the break we'll come back with that story. Is that okay?
Absolutely, yeah.
So I hope you've enjoyed the first half of Living a Dynamic Life, and we'll go to Dave's story, which will obviously entice you to watch the second half, because I'm looking forward to listening to this too. Thank you.
Like my meditation tennis. When I'm playing tennis, I'm completely focused. I'm in the zone. It's being with other like-minded people, being with loving people, laughter, having fun, and all these things have one thing in common, which is being in the moment. And I've tried many healing modalities to get rid of the emotional blocks, but there's a lot of very, very dense ones and heavy ones that still remain. And what I learned through Real Love was the understanding that the sole reason for all our pain, all our suffering,